I'll call this meeting to order, and this is the regular meeting of the Transportation and Public Works Committee. This day, June 17th, 2014. I'm Councilman Reich. I'll be chairing the committee, and I'm joined by Council members Glidden, Palmisano, Gordon, and Bender. We are quorum. We can conduct the committee's business. We do have an amendment to the agenda, and if committee members don't mind, there will be two walk-on items, and they're in front of the committee members. One is a bid, and the other is an application for a large block event. And also there's a change to the order of the discussion of the portion of the agenda to hear the car sharing program update number 19 prior to the Nicollet Mall redesign project number 18. With that, with those two or three adjustments, is there any concern about the agenda as proposed? Seeing none, we will proceed then accordingly. The first set of items are consent items, and I will go through those. If committee members wish to pull anything, please indicate that. Item 5 on the consent agenda is the Urban Works contract amendment. That's to authorize execution of the amendment of the standard agreement contract with Urban Works for professional services related to the management of special service districts, extending the date of the contract from June 30th, 2014 to November 30th, 2014, and increase the contract amount by $50,000 for a revised contract total of $100,000. No additional appropriation is required. Item 6 is the agreement with Burlington Northern Santa Fe, authorized execution agreement with BNSF Railway up to obtain a permit of temporary occupation to perform maintenance repairs to a shallow utility tunnel under their property. Item 7 is the alley reconstruction project. Approve resolution designating the location, which is 45th Avenue North and Irving Avenue North alley reconstruction projects, and receive the cost estimate of $52,330. List the benefited properties and instruct the city engineer to prepare proposed special assessments against those properties and set that public hearing for July 22nd, 2014. Item 8 is the Source Water Protection Plan Implementation Grant. And those series of approvals are to authorize the acceptance of the Minnesota Department of Health Source Water Protection Plan grant at $10,000, execution of the grant, subrecipients and disbursement related to those agreements, and increase the appropriation of the revenue of the Source Water Protection Program by $10,000. That item will be referred to the Ways and Means Committee. Item 9 is the Solid Waste and Recycling Services at Minneapolis Park locations. Authorize execution of an MOU between the Minneapolis Park and Rec and the Public Works Solid Waste Division for solid waste and recycling collection services at some Minneapolis Park locations for a 3-year period with the option of 2 one-year extensions. Item 10 is agreement with the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority. Authorize negotiation execution of the agreement with the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority, allowing the city and the MSFA to cooperatively participate in the cost of public infrastructure improvements related to that stadium project, and includes street lighting and traffic signal construction in the amount of $593,142.25 to be paid to the existing city funds, and increase the capital budget by $545,000, $548.57 to reflect the reimbursement of the city to the street lighting and traffic signal interconnect single materials testing as built. This item will be referred to Rating Means. And item 11 is the PV Plaza Downtown Council donation. Authorized donation acceptance of the furnishing and installation of landscaping to PV Plaza valued at approximately $30,000 from the Minneapolis Downtown Council, and approve the resolution accepting the donation. That item will be referred to Ways and Means Committee. Item 12 is the Pedestrian Advisory Committee appointments. Approve the appointments of the following: Emily Anton, Shayna Brassard, Robert Loken, Neil Baxter, Scott Engel, Donna Hemp, and Dan Herber. Item 13 is the Major League Baseball and Minnesota Twins Chevy Experience Pepsi All-Star Rock Block Party. Approve the application of that event for July 11th to July 16th, 2014 to operate in an outside time frame allowed under the ordinance. And item 14 is the Hennepin County grant for Lake Nokomis stormwater practices. Authorized negotiation and execution agreement with Hennepin County for $6,000 from the Natural Resources Incentives Critical Habitat Program for reimbursement from activities to reduce stormwater runoff to the storm sewer system leading to Lake Nokomis, and to increase the appropriation of the revenue source by $6,000. This item will be referred to Ways and Means Committee. Item 15 is the Special Service District Advisory Appointments. Those names are listed for all of our city commissions. who advise us on those areas. Item 16 is the Green Corps Member Support and Solid Waste Recycling Division. Approve resolution declaring the support of the Division of Solid Waste Recycling to host an AmeriCorps member through the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency Green Corps Program 2014-2015 program year. Item 17 are a series of bids: accept low bid of Project Restoration Incorporated, accept a low bid of Safety Signs LLC, and accept a low bid of FurPal Construction USA LLC. The walk-on items are accept the single bid of Duke's Root Control for an estimated expenditure of $74,680 for sewer line root control. That item we refer to Ways and Means Committee. And the other walk-on item in consent is the Minnesota Food Truck Fair. Approve application for a large block event to be held June 29, 2014, to operate outside the time frame allowed under ordinance. And that concludes the consent items as amended. Anyone wish to pull anything? Seeing none, all is in favor of approving them as stated, say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. We now can go into the public hearing section of today's meeting, starting with public hearing number 1, 40th Street East, West Street resurfacing project that will go from Lyndale Avenue South to Stevens Avenue South. Good morning, Director Kaki.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Mike Kennedy, our Director of Transportation Maintenance and Repair, will make this presentation.
Morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Mike Kennedy, Director of Transportation Maintenance and Repair for Public Works. We're here this morning for the public hearing for the 40th Street East and West resurfacing project. On April 25th, 2014, the City Council approved the project designation, received a cost estimate, and set a public hearing for today for this particular project. On May 23rd, the City Council amended the project designation to include one additional block from First to Stevens. The cost estimate for the whole project was revised to $262,000 and change, and is financed by net debt bonds and special assessments. 40th from Lyndale to First Avenue was paved in 1958, and the remaining block was paved in 1978. This would be a resurfacing mill and overlay of the street with hot mix asphalt performed by City Forces. The street resurfacing special assessments were determined by applying the 2014 uniform assessment rates of 60 cents per square foot for non-residential non-residential properties and 20 cents per square foot for residential properties. There was a public pre-public meeting held on June 10th for the neighborhoods. Therefore, our recommendation today is to pass a resolution ordering the city engineer to proceed and do the work and adopt special assessments in the amount of $66,692.76 for the 40th Street project, and pass a resolution requesting the Board of Estimate and Taxation to issue and sell assessment bonds in the amount of $66,695 for this project.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the presentation? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. And this is a public hearing for the project as described. Has anyone signed in? No one has signed in. Does anyone wish to approach? Anyone wish to speak during the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and move approval of the project as stated by staff. Is there any conversation, discussion? Seeing none, all in approval, say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. We'll now move to the second public hearing, which is the Cedar Avenue Sidewalk Modification Project.
Mr. Chair, Chris Engelman, who is our project engineer for this project, will make the presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Chris Engelman. I am a project engineer with the City of Minneapolis Public Works Transportation Planning and Engineering Division. I'm here regarding the Cedar Sidewalk Modification Project. The Cedar Sidewalk Modification Project is a proposed sidewalk modifications and reconstruction, basically a pedestrian reconstruction of Cedar Avenue South from approximately 3rd Street South to 7th Street South. This includes the full removal and replacement of west side curb, sidewalks on the east and west side of Cedar Avenue, restriping of the roadway with a new configuration, and street lighting along Cedar Avenue, as well as tree infill along the corridor. The project is currently planned for this season. The project cost estimate is $1,695,500. $1,695,500. What we're asking today is, recommending today is pass a resolution ordering the city engineer to proceed and do the work, adopt special assessments in the amounts of $148,000 for the Cedar Avenue sidewalk project, pass a resolution with the Board of Estimate and Taxation to issue and sell assessment bonds, and pass a resolution ordering the city engineer to abandon and remove areaways located in the public right-of-way that are in conflict with the project in itself. Happy to answer any questions you may have for the project.
Are there any questions per the presentation? Seeing none, I will then open the public hearing. And this is a public hearing for the Cedar Sidewalk Modification Project. We do have people who have signed in. I will call them in order. Beginning with Rod Johnson, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Rod Johnson. I am a Minneapolis resident for all 65 years of my life. I started Midwest Mountaineering in my kitchen 44 years ago. 38 years ago, I moved Midwest Mountaineering to Cedar Riverside, and I'm extremely familiar with the area. Midwest Mountaineering has over 100 employees. We have over 50,000 customers signed up on our email list. In 2010, we won an award for the best overall retailer in the entire nation. It was awarded by Backpacker Magazine. We've been very happy at Cedar Riverside, except for the last couple of years. We've had a lot of access problems. Our customers have been having trouble getting to Midwest Mountaineering. And this morning I would like to specifically address not excluding our block from this project. As you can see in the picture, the Midwest Mountaineering sidewalks are in excellent condition. We've taken some care at landscaping, installing pedestrian lighting. We've modified the facade, so we've opened some of the historic windows. Under Midwest Mountaineering, this is right under the sidewalk. We have areaways that connect our basements together. I was going to try to point out up here, right up here is a stairway that connects the basements with first floor. And if these areaways are filled in, we won't be able to use that stairway that we use 100 times a day. Every time a customer tries on a pair of boots or hiking shoes, we have to run down in the basement to get a pair for the customer. When merchandise comes in, we use that stairway to bring the merchandise up to the store. When customers have ski work done or have a return, we use that stairway. If the areaways are filled in, we won't be able to use that stairway. It would be a devastating blow to Midwest Mountaineering. So please, and if you're going to approve any taking of areaways, exclude Midwest Mountaineering from that. A much better way to do this is just to exclude the whole block. At this committee meeting a month or two ago, I had talked to Chris Engelman, and I had asked him, why not just exclude the entire block? The sidewalks are in excellent condition, and we wouldn't have to risk destroying Midwest Mountaineering's access to our basement. And his answer to me was, because of the ADA regulations, we have to include this. So I told Chris that I was going to hire an attorney, which is Brad Gunn, and he sent a letter, I think you have a copy of it, saying that it is okay to exclude this. Joseph Bernard sent me a link to the ADA regulations. I printed the 190-page manual. I carefully reviewed them myself before I hired Mr. Gunn. And these do not prohibit this block from being eliminated from the project. This is the northeast corner of the block. The sidewalks are in excellent condition. There's just no reason to leave it in. The sidewalk slope, according to the city engineer, is 5% instead of 2%, 2.08%. And I don't know if anyone here has driven in the mountains, but they'll have a warning sign for a 5 or 6% grade. It's really steep. Grade isn't measured in degrees of angle. The way grade is measured is you take the rise. Here I am measuring the grade of our sidewalk. You take the rise of 4 inches in our case and divide it by the width of the sidewalk, 14 feet 9 inches, and then you multiply by 100. And the guidelines specify 2.08, and our sidewalk is 2.25. And as you can see, this is perfectly safe for wheelchairs. There's not a problem with wheelchairs here. So, does anyone have any questions for me?
I don't see any. I think your presentation has been well stated, and you've made your points.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we will. We will continue along, and we'll take all the testimony, and then staff can answer questions as they have arisen from the presenters, from the public. Continuing on, we have Sharon Johnson, who's next signed up.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I would like to ratify everything my husband just said, but I want to be very clear that the committee understands the financial implications for Midwest Mountaineering on this issue. I'm not sure they've been adequately addressed yet. We're an iconic business. We've been there a long time. We're an anchor in the area. We have 100 employees. To have to, because of the sidewalk project, relocate the main stairway that's used every day in a 100-year-old building is a huge expense for a business like ours, not one that we can take in stride. It would disrupt an ongoing business and cause financial havoc for us at a time when we're also facing increased property taxes. Some of our property taxes have gone up 40%. This particular expenditure, if it should come along, and it is an if, would not be covered by insurance. There is no compensation allowed by the city. It would be, as Rod said, devastating for us. That's if it happens. And I understand that the approval of the areaway removal is only if it has an implication, if it creates a problem for the project. But the rest of this story is this: merely by approving the potential removal of the areaways, you create a contingent liability for Midwest Mountaineering that hampers our ability to get financing. Our bank will want to know about this, and they regard it as a risk. So I'd like you to consider very carefully what Rod has suggested, and that is removing just the sidewalks on the west side of the portion of the project on the north side of Riverside Avenue. If you're going to take this kind of risk or expose Midwest Mountaineering to this kind of risk, there needs to be a good reason, a good solid reason, and I do not believe that there is a compelling reason to include Midwest sidewalks in this project. I think you have the ability to exclude them, and I'd like you very carefully to consider doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in order is David Merrick. Please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Markle, 303 Cedar. I've resided there in the neighborhood for many years, and specifically at that address for a while, quite a while. And I agree with Mr. Johnson. I walk that sidewalk every day. I go through the store often. I shop there, and I can't see any need for renovation of that sidewalk on that side of the street. But above and beyond that, the underlying purpose, the stated purpose for the whole project has been upgrading the sidewalks on a 3-block stretch of Cedar. And the sidewalks between 4th Street, Riverside, and south to 7th Street do in fact need a lot of repair, and I'm happy that the county came up with money to do that. But I'm worried about the traffic problems that we're going to have due to the reconfiguration. At various meetings preparatory to this process, I urged that tests be conducted on the street using J barriers or orange cones to see what would happen if the street were modified that way, and these concerns were brushed off, that it couldn't be done or that it wouldn't show anything, et cetera, et cetera. Then I wrote an analysis of the underlying street studies from the county and previous one that was commissioned by the city. You've seen this material already, I think. And I looked at what would happen to emergency vehicles if this modification were carried forward, specifically whether they would encounter difficulties getting into the extremely dense populated area of Riverside Plaza. And there are real serious questions about that. But finally, I would like to question the reasoning for the site. Well, then I also suggested that on the west side of the street, specifically south of Riverside, that the sidewalk not be widened quite so much. Take 2 feet off that proposed widening, which I'm quite sure would still satisfy EDC requirements, and it would leave enough room in the street if it proves that we do in fact need all those traffic lanes. I mean, once the concrete is poured, and if we have a terrible problem, then we have a terrible problem, and it's a lot easier to add to the sidewalk than it is to remove it. I question the city's actual commitment to pedestrians. I've gone to meetings organized specifically for pedestrians in Minneapolis, at neighborhood meetings in my own neighborhood and elsewhere, and I've meetings for this project and other related projects, and I've repeatedly asked that a red illuminated no right turn arrow be installed on the corner of the northwest corner of Riverside and Cedar, because every day hundreds of cars make an improper right turn there when they're not supposed to. There's a printed no right turn on red sign, but I gather that most of the people making the improper turn don't see the sign, or else they disregard it. And I've written letters on this. Nothing has ever happened. People take notes at meetings as if something's going to happen, and it never has. I've come close to getting run over myself at that intersection. And one day I actually kicked a car that started to turn. And the man stopped in Cedar immediately after having made the corner and got out and said, "Why did you hit my car?" And I pointed at the sign. It says no right turn on red. He says, "Oh, I didn't see that." Well, it didn't give you the right to hit my car. And he got back in and went because I was bigger than he was. But I should have said my foot was in the intersection before your car got there. Meanwhile, I don't doubt the city's commitment to bicycles. So much has been done for bicyclists. Should I mention in my neighborhood the less than 400-yard tunnel being constructed for a bicycle trail under the 35W bridge at a cost of $3 million. And yet the city simply won't put up a red illuminated no right turn arrow. So that's all I have to say. Any questions?
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Continuing in order, we will have Robert Schmittner. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. I'm Robert Schmittner. I'm a longtime resident here in Minneapolis. I'm an owner at 1821 Riverside, Hard Times Cafe. I'm here to state our stance on the construction and ask questions as to why all this construction is happening in one of the top bicycle cities in the country, and yet no bike lanes are being added in between this destination bar neighborhood and as well as just residential neighborhood. Everyone I own this cafe with bikes to work 22 hours a day in the midst of drunk driving in between 35W and 94 where people are cutting across to get to different highways. Yeah, this project is costing a lot of money, and we're just simply wondering why a white line can't be painted on the street to maybe give us a buffer between cars and the sidewalk. That's our stance. Any questions?
Seeing none, and we'll have staff address those questions when we conclude the public hearing, so thank you.
Thank you.
Moving down the list, we have Rusam Solomon. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Rusam Solomon. I own the Resi 320 Cedar Avenue South in Minneapolis. I'll just try to keep my comments very short. My purpose here is to support the development for two reasons. One, our sidewalk is very narrow as compared to the one across the street from Midwest Mountaineering. We are immediately across Midwest Mountaineering, where we have a very narrow sidewalk. And for business and restaurant business, that's very dangerous for our customers, and it's not pedestrian friendly. This project will also add parking on the west side, which is on our side. With Lot A, the lot behind our business, slated for redevelopment, and RFP coming out for it, any addition of parking will help my business survive. The rest has been in business for 25 years. We've owned it for the last 12 years, so those 25 years. And we struggle. We pay high property tax, yet we are not afraid to pay an additional assessment to this because it will help the overall neighborhood and our thing. I also feel that the city of Riverside is way neglected. This is a project way past overdue. Should have been done a long time ago. So I am here to support this development. It is way past overdue, and I want you to really help us get it done. And that's the way the neighborhood feels as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move down the list. Hussein Ahmed, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Hussein Ahmed. I'm the director of West Bank Community Coalition. I apologize, I've got a sore throat if I'm uneven in voice. Well, I'm here to support the project because one of the things that we really looked at was the neighborhood response to this. There has been a couple of meetings in the last month, and prior to that, last year, there was also meetings about this project, and I think it's well overdue. And also, this project has been featured in a small area project, done that in 2007 and 8, I believe. This project will greatly enhance the neighborhood image and livability in terms of beautification, and it will also appeal to residents, visitors, and shoppers alike. With the arrival of the LRT, actually it has arrived already, and the Green Line that opened recently, this past Saturday, and the Cedar Blue Line, with the increased traffic that will be resulting from those two developments, and Fine Associates that's developing a new residential in the neighborhood on the 15th Avenue, just across from the Brian Coyle Community Center. That alone will increase the population in the neighborhood to about 4,000 people. More people will be coming to the area. And we are expecting to get more and more traffic in that area. And Cedar Avenue has always been a gridlock during traffic and high traffic times, especially rush hour, and we also represented a safety concern for our neighborhood residents. So with that in mind, with the traffic increase and so forth, this project will really help in alleviating the gridlock in that neighborhood. Also, this project will also help in the flow of traffic, also the safety of the pedestrians, by widening the sidewalk, especially the west of Cedar, which is really uneven in width if you look at. The area that's close to 400 block, where the bar 400 is, it's very narrow. People who are who are on wheelchair bound have difficulty passing there, and I've seen many times. So I think this will be a great help to them when that sidewalk is widened. Furthermore, the WBCC board has twice supported this project after we heard from the residents. And finally, what we really like to see is this project go ahead, and its benefits far outweigh the minor concerns or misgivings that people have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else signed in subsequently? No? Anyone wish to speak in addition to those who have? Anyone wish to speak? Seeing no one coming forward, I will close the public hearing and ask for staff to respond to the questions that came out of the testimony.
Mr. Chair, I have 3 questions that I was able to track with this. I think primarily the questions that I have were the areaway conflict, as I think it was noted. The areaway at the Midwest Mountaineering project, areaway at the Midwest Mountaineering is not in conflict with the project. We are not requesting that it be removed. We have coordinated with the property owner to identify the location, and we have adjusted our plans accordingly. We feel that it is within the scope of the project to maintain that areaway and not affect their access to the areaway or require any modifications to the project as part of this project. I believe the second question that was raised was regarding the right turn red arrow at Riverside and Cedar. My understanding, and I'm not the one that has done the analysis, but I have coordinated with our traffic department, and I would defer to them if I speak on this, and I can follow up to make sure that I am saying the right thing. But my understanding is that the red arrow would not add anything as far as enforcement or encouragement to not make that right turn. There is a sign there now. The red arrow addition to that would not add any safety benefit or any compliance with that no right turn on red. The third question was relating to bike lanes on Cedar Avenue. The bike master plan does not show bike lanes on Cedar Avenue. I think it was part of the larger context of the transportation system in the area that we have bike lanes on Riverside, 19th and 20th. We have bike lanes going in on 15th Avenue South, and 6th Street South is also a bike route, but not striped bike lanes, if I remember correctly. It was as part of a balanced transportation plan in this area that we tried to accommodate and improve as much as we can across the board. One of the things that we were not obviously able to do was incorporate bike lanes on this corridor, but we felt the pedestrian zone was severely, I won't say deficient, but in need of additional improvements. We were able to incorporate other aspects of it, including the trees and the parking, that will create a condition so that it's a much more pedestrian-friendly environment, better commercial environment, and still maintain an overall transportation plan that encouraged multimodal use through the area long-term. I apologize if I missed any questions. Did I miss anybody's questions?
Can I speak? Is that all right?
Oh, the public hearing's been closed. Oh, sorry. So I believe,
Mr. Chair.
yeah, thank you. It is kind of an interesting observation that we've had testimony that say we're over committing to bicyclists and at the same time under committing to bicyclists. So, but my recommendation is to maybe send a letter to your community group and perhaps even the Bicycle Advisory Commission to get on the radar that there might be a desire to have a bicycle facility in that area. Those are the people who advise us and help design our bicycle system, and that's what we try to implement. So I would encourage folks to get engaged at that level. You made a good case here. You could probably make a good case there. I will now open up the for conversation from the committee members, starting with Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know the issue of the bike lane and bike transportation was discussed at length. And we did follow the advice of the Bicycle Advisory Committee and others, and there's a lot of other bicycle infrastructure out there, although it resonates with me, and I wonder about the future, if there's some possibility or what we could do with there and the width and all of those things. But I mostly wanted to focus on the issue of this sidewalk on the east side between 3rd and Riverside, where Midwest Mountaineering is, because my whole basis for supporting that sidewalk to be reconstructed has to do with the ADA requirements and how it's measured, and if indeed it is out of compliance and what that means. I also have a second question asking if we could actually, I mean, we do have a part of the action we're expected to take today is to authorizing the removal of areaways located in the public right-of-way that are in conflict. And I wonder if maybe it would be appropriate for us to expressly put in the resolution that we would be excluding certain areaways if we understand we're already excluding that areaway, and let's just nail it down today. But back to the slope. How many places did we measure for the slope? Did this go through our committee with people with disabilities advisory group to look at it? I have heard a lot of complaints from wheelchair users about Cedar Avenue, but not about this section. The complaints are all about the narrow sidewalks, the chopped up, broken up sidewalks. And when I started working on this entire project, it was mostly about the sidewalks that had the strange tiles and were different, and it wasn't about the sidewalk up here where Midwest Mountaineering is. So I just need to hear more about the ADA and the slope, and if maybe Mr. Engelman could come back up and tell us about how many measurements were taken, and if they think there's a need to measure again and make sure, and who looked at it, and how much trouble we'll be in if we do reconstruct it and we don't fix this problem. And I can repeat or rephrase, think of new questions if you want, but what do you think about the issue that the slope isn't that bad as we seem to think it is?
Mr. Chair, Committee Member Gordon, we did consult this project. We worked directly with Kimley Horn to provide us with analysis and a variety of different engineering support, and they developed the plans for us. They provided us with a survey. Honestly, I'm not able to say how many shots there were, but it was a primary concern in development of the plans to say, were there areas that we could not replace sidewalk because of it did not have an ADA concern. It wasn't a problem with the other vision items, putting in trees, widening the sidewalk, correcting slope grade issues. There are portions of the corridor more to the south that we were able to address that without removing sidewalk as far as grades go. So we understand the concerns, and we understand that we did not want to remove sidewalk that was didn't meet the vision and goals of what we're trying to accomplish on this corridor. The specific question regarding what constitutes a out of compliance, we do look at the pedestrian access route. So if a full width of a sidewalk is less than 2%, but there's parts where the pedestrian is going to be most heavily using, or the route that we expect them to use, that is more than 2%, that is what we're looking at, is the area that we have to be concerned about. So if we have an area that's, in an inverted V or a V, and your slope across that area is less than 2%, it does not give us compliance if the 5 foot in the middle there is at a 7% grade, and then it comes back up. So we looked at that pretty much on a almost panel by panel, and looking at it directly as a pedestrian route that they would be coordinated through.
Could we have access to that data? So somebody looked at it panel by panel, and you're saying there might be some V's in the sidewalk there that.
That's an example. That's not necessarily exactly what's going on in this location, but that the information is electronic. We have it within our within the consultant files. It's a digital format in CAD drawing, so it doesn't come out as a table in a very user-friendly review manner, and as far as that goes. But they looked at it, and our plan set does show the cross sections that we're having to do on each one of these in about every 25 feet. So we could take a look at that with you if you're interested in seeing that.
Even if you could just send it to me, that would be.
We can do that, son.
Useful. And
There was the issue of the areaway.
my other question was, could we expressly clarify in any action we take today that we'd be excluding certain areaways from consideration? And maybe Mr. Kotke can help with that answer too. You understand what I'm asking? I'm looking for if we can clarify. We've heard right now from the property owner the areaway is crucial to their business and is vitally important. We've heard from our engineering staff that they have no intention of taking this areaway. Why don't we just make that part of the council action today then, saying we will not take any areaways in this location?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, I think we could. I'm not sure it's necessary. This language that we have here is, as you probably know, very common language that we have in all projects. And it's really to identify, the bigger issue for us is the unknown areaways, and to make sure that during the construction of the project, if we're out in, near the edge of the street and we find an abandoned areaway that no one knew about, that this gives us the ability to keep the project moving forward. So that's the purpose of inserting this language, in which you'll see pretty much in all of our street construction projects that we have this language. I think your question about could we single out the Midwest Mountaineering areaway from this, I think we could. I guess I'd like to put the qualifier in, assuming that there's not a conflict. We don't believe there's a conflict. I think we've looked at it closely, so we don't believe there would be. But I think we'd like to ensure that should there be a conflict or something unknown, that perhaps their areaway that they see today actually perhaps extends out further into the street than we had envisioned. That gives us the ability to manage that. So I think. Once again, I'm not sure it's necessary to modify this, but if you would like to, we certainly could do that.
Okay, well, if we did add something, I guess then what we'd be saying is if you find some extension and mystery areaway in this location we didn't know about, you have to come back to the committee so that we can then weigh that and decide, indeed, so it seems like the council would have the authority to do that later, but at least it would clarify it here. I guess that's all the questions and comments I have for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to add something clarifying this, just because of the nature of the impact on the business. I think it's appropriate for us to be clear at this point in the project. But I understand what you're saying, so I think I would like to be able to find some legally appropriate way to articulate what Councilmember Gordon was asking. I wanted to speak to the bicycle access piece. I was on the bicycle advisory committee when this project came. It must have been 2 or 3 years ago, many times. And it was not a unanimous conversation. I mean, we weren't all in agreement. I probably was on the side of wanting to add bike lanes to Cedar. But folks who bike in this area more frequently than I do, felt comfortable with the alternative routes. I know that doesn't work when you're going to a location on Cedar. And so I know that, and we talked about that a lot at length. But the decision was made at the end at the BAC to support the pedestrian improvements on this street. It is such a critical pedestrian connection, high pedestrian volumes. So it was a trade-off we made, but not without a lot of discussion. So I hear that loud and clear. So I think those were the two comments that I had. There was a third thing. I did also just want to highlight that because of the creative funding pieces we were able to put in place, property owners are only being assessed for 11% of the total project cost, which is, I think, really testament to staff's great work to finding funding to support this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Palmisano, followed by Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you. I appreciate everything that's been said before. In addition, I would hope that we are putting some kind of language that gives the business owners rightful comfort about the areaway, but not one where if we run into a problem during construction that we have to wait to go back through a committee cycle. Something I also hear loud and clear is how much disruption of the area has taken place over the last couple of years. And I just wanted to acknowledge that maybe there's a way that we can come up with that doesn't cause any undue delay during the construction. Thanks.
Okay, noted. Councilmember Gordon?
So I thought that Mr. Kotke has a comment too. So the motion, I'll just alert everybody to the motion I'm thinking to move to delay this one cycle. That will give some chance for us to look at some other issues that are involved with this project potentially, but also clarify the areaway, craft some language about that. It's something I feel like I can't really do at the committee right here, but everybody, I think there's some sympathy for that idea, and that staff can work with me and we can work with our attorneys and come up with something that might be good, and we'll look at this again then at the committee in 2 weeks.
Okay, very good. I'll take that as a motion. Director Kaki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and actually thank you, Councilmember Gordon. I was just going to indicate the same thing, that with this, staff would request that the actions that you have in front of you get postponed one cycle to allow us to, we've just received the bids and we're looking at the issue of the bids and some options, and so we would prefer if we could postpone the action items one cycle, and that would allow us to look closer at this issue of language associated with the areaway.
Very good. So we have a motion by Councilmember Gordon, concurrence by staff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Dissenting nay. That carries. We are postponing this item one cycle. Thank you very much for all those who testified and presented. We will now move on to the other public hearing, which is public hearing number 3, Edgewater Area, Cedar Avenue South Street Resurfacing Project.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kennedy will make this presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, again, Mike Kennedy from Public Works. We're here for the Edgewater Area and Cedar Avenue South resurfacing project. On May 9th, 2014, the City Council approved the project designation, received a cost estimate, and set a public hearing for today for these projects, or this combined project. The cost estimate for this project is $1,126,658 and is financed by net debt bonds and special assessments. The Edgewater area is bounded by 54th on the north, Edgewater Boulevard and Cedar Avenue on the east, and 58th Street on the south, as shown on the map in your packet. The streets in this area are local city streets and were last paved in 1978. The one portion of Cedar Avenue from Edgewater Boulevard to 58th is a local city street and was last paved in 1962. This would be a mill and overlay, a resurfacing of the pavement surface with plant mix bituminous done by city forces. The street resurfacing special assessments were again determined by applying the 2014 uniform assessment rates of 60 cents per square foot for non-residential and 20 cents per square foot for residential properties. There was a pre-public hearing meeting with the community on June 12th. Our recommendation today is to pass a resolution ordering the city engineer to proceed and do the work and adopt special assessments in the amount of $789,774.65 for this project, and pass a resolution requesting the Board of Estimate Taxation to issue and sell assessment bonds in the amount of $789,775.
Thank you. Any questions per the presentation? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing, and this is a public hearing for the Edgewater Area Cedar Avenue South Street Resurfacing Project. And I do have people who have signed in. I will go in order, starting with Nancy Anderson. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Nancy Andreasen, and my home is at 5701 14th Avenue South. I've lived in the neighborhood for 20 years. I have to admit I was surprised to receive a letter that said that the streets in my neighborhood were soon to be resurfaced, that is sometime later this summer. Our neighborhood has undergone a fair bit of disturbance over the last few years. A couple of years ago, all of our sidewalks were resurfaced, and of course we went through paying assessments for that project. Last year, the water department came through and realigned a number of the pipes. That project continues into this summer, another disruption of the neighborhood. Nevertheless, I thought, well, if I'm receiving a letter, there must be a reason why these streets need to be resurfaced. So I made my own map, and I drove up and down every one of the streets that are bounded by this proposed project. And the only streets that you can make an argument for resurfacing, in my estimation, would be 12th Avenue and Edgewater. And those two streets happen to be the most traveled of the streets bounded by this proposed project, so that makes some sense. The other streets, really, it's a huge stretch to say that they need immediate resurfacing. That could easily be put off for another year or two in order to give the residents of that neighborhood a chance to recover both from the assessments they recently paid for the sidewalk resurfacing and the general disruption from the sidewalk resurfacing and the water project that I said continues into this summer. So I would ask you to reconsider and give our neighborhood a break of at least a year or two, and that way we can all prepare to pay the assessment costs that will be coming for this resurfacing project. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call William Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm so pleased to see that a neighbor of mine just a couple blocks over, who I may know but do not remember, was here to testify against this project at this time. My name is William Ball. I'm a resident at 55 and property owner at 5504 13th Avenue South. I've owned that home since 2001, but it's actually been in my family since 1956, so I think I'm eminently qualified to speak on the knowledge of the area and all the work that has or hasn't been done over the years. On June 11th, I sent an email to Christopher Trembrath, the engineering technician, and to Councilmember Quincy, indicating because I was going to be traveling, I would be unable to attend the public hearing on June 12th. In that email, I asked for a number of answers to be provided to justify this project, specifically noting Councilmember Quincy's letter, the number of pothole complaints that have been received by street, and alluding to what the previous speaker just said, the condition of these streets, in particular my block on 13th Avenue. I would like the committee or the staff to provide me some details as to how many pothole complaints have been received to justify this resurfacing. I might add I have yet to receive an acknowledgement from either Mr. Trembrath or, no surprise to me, Councilmember Quincy. I've had previous issues getting emails returned. But that said, my concern here is basically three questions. Number one, what's the total number of pothole complaints by street for all these streets that's planning to be resurfaced? Number two, what are the number of pothole complaints for the 5500 block of 13th Avenue? And let's throw in the 5700 block of 14th Avenue while we're at it as well. And finally, I would like to see what is the estimated cost in today's dollars to do a major resurfacing of this street, because what concerns me is I'm a couple of years away from retirement. And I'm looking here at Councilmember Quincy's letter says the project will extend the quality of the streets for at least another 10 years. So that tells me that somewhere around the time I'm hitting my early 70s, I could be facing another major bill. At this point, I think I'd rather wait and pay for something later, and as Ms. Andreasen has so eloquently stated, let's avoid another season of disruption in a city where, and in a particular neighborhood where, quite frankly, I think a lot of us are just looking to get out and enjoy the neighborhood after the winter we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call Ronald. I can't quite make out the last part, but if you could state your name and address for the record.
Well, it's Riam.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I live at 57th and 57th Street, 1712. I got a couple of problems besides the resurfacing. These people here can't plow. They plow the boulevard. Why do I have a boulevard? They take the curb out. I got a big chunk out of that. They leave a big hole in it. Then they pile all the snow up. I just got the sidewalk clean. I'm 73 years old. I got a pile of snow this high across my sidewalk. Who's going to move it? They won't come back. They get no response. And then you're going to resurface this? Why do I even have a boulevard? Got some answers?
We will, the staff, as per the usual, will respond to questions after we've taken all testimony.
Well, that's my testimony. I'm not real happy about doing the street the second time.
Understood. And I have one more person signed in for the public hearing, and after that, we will get questions answered from staff.
Thank you. I had Mr. Quincy out there also on this.
Okay, thank you. Moving down the list, we have Robert Hansen. Please come forward, state your name for the address for the record.
Yeah, 1706 Edgewater Boulevard. I'm on Edgewater, and that has a disproportionate amount of traffic, through traffic, where the other streets don't have that traffic. And I'm concerned that, Edgewater will have to be repaired more because of all that through traffic than the others. And I just don't want to be paying a disproportionate share of repair because of all the extra through traffic on that street. So that's my concern is disproportionate payment.
Thank you. Staff will address that as well as the other testimony. Those are the folks who've signed in. Anyone else signed in? Anyone else wish to approach and speak for the public hearing? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask staff to address the issues raised.
Mr. Chair, Mike Kennedy, I'll try to remember them all. Help me out if I miss something. The first question about all the activity in the neighborhood, some of that's a little bit deliberate. We do try to separate activities that contain assessments, the sidewalks versus the streets versus the alleys and things like that. We try to do that as best we can so people aren't hit all at once. And we are a few years apart here with the resurfacing the sidewalks, but try to do the best we can, but we can't always completely stay away from kind of the cross assessments. The water relining project, that isn't something that is assessed, but it is disruptive, but that's a little bit deliberate too. We want that work done prior to the resurfacing, and so we had programmed that with our water department so that we don't come back and dig into the new pavement with the water relining project. Regarding the need for the project, this isn't all about just potholes. It's about the life cycle of the pavement. It's about the general condition of the pavement. We have one of our measures is the pavement condition index. The PCI for this neighborhood, for the Edgewater area, is about 60. When it's in the range between 70 and 40, it makes it a very good candidate for this type of work. This is about extending the life, not necessarily about doing work on a road that has failed. When a road has failed, when it's really obvious to people that something needs to be done, then it's too late for this. This is a very standard way of preventative maintenance to extend the life of the pavements so that we don't have to expend a lot of time and work doing that. The comment about the 10-year extension, I've heard this before. A lot of people think, when we talk about a 10-year life extension, they automatically go to the assumption that we're going to be back in 10 years doing something again. And that's not true. It's very unlikely that we will be back. Typically, we like to do this kind of work at about between 30 and 40 years in the pavement's life. That's about what we're at here. This is to extend that life so that we don't have to come back. We shouldn't be back doing any potholes for 10 years or so. But the next thing we would be doing is maybe another seal coat 10, 15 years out, and then we're talking about reconstruction years and years away. But we would not be back in 10 years asking to do this again. So I can talk to the gentleman about the plumbing problems on the side. I'd be happy to do that. Not sure what the reference to doing the street the second time was, but I'd be happy to talk with him. The question about a disproportionate payment because of being on Edgewater, that's a higher traffic volume, that is exactly what the uniform assessment rate helps avoid. Everybody pays the same within the project area, the same rate. The value might change based on the size of your property because it's based on square foot, but everybody pays the same rate for the work in the neighborhood, and it's consistent.
Thank you.
Hope I got it all.
And I hope the previous person who gave testimony will take you up on your offer to talk about the specific issues, particularly those issues that don't relate to the project before us, how we maintain the roads during the snowy season. Okay, with that, I will move to approve this action as stated in staff's testimony and presentation. Any further discussion? Councilmember Gordon?
I just wanted to note that there's been resurfacing projects in a number of areas in my ward. These actually are less disruptive than almost everything else that we do in terms of the streets. A lot of people think that this is like a reconstruction and my road's going to be dug up for weeks on end. It isn't. I know there was one time when there was a lot of rain, so day one got completed and it took them a long time to come back for day two. But if this is done right, it gets done in a week's time easily, and the assessments don't go away, but the roads are in really great shape for a while, and I think it's a positive thing, and I hope it turns out that way even for the people who came in here upset about it today.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further comment? See none, all in approval say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay, that carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to the last of our public hearings, which is the Stormwater Management Program and Annual Report.
Mr. Chair, we have Lois Everhart here this morning from our Surface Water and Sewers Division that will make this presentation.
Good morning. I'm Lois Everhart, the Water Resources Administrator in Public Works, Surface Water and Sewers Division. Mr. Chair and committee members, the City and the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board are co-permittees on this permit. It's under the Federal Clean Water Act, which started in 1972, and every 5 years or so, the permit is extended or rewritten. Our first permit of this type was in the early 1990s. One of the requirements is an annual report preceded by an opportunity for public input, and so that is the purpose of today's public hearing. This permit is related to discharge of precipitation, rain and snow melt, as stormwater runoff into public water bodies. In a fully built city like Minneapolis, some rain that falls soaks into the ground, but most stormwater runs off into an extensive system of pipes and then into the public water bodies, one of our lakes or creeks, or the Mississippi River. As the stormwater flows over hard surfaces like rooftops and parking lots and streets, it picks up pollutants. So Minneapolis, like other cities, is required to manage the stormwater to keep the pollutants from degrading the water bodies. Oops. Sorry. This management is done under what's called an MS4 permit, which stands for Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewer System. And this permit is not related to the sanitary sewer system or the pumping of groundwater. So to clarify, this permit is about the collection, conveyance, treatment, storage, and discharge of stormwater, meaning precipitation, rain, and snowmelt. The primary goal of the program is good water quality in our lakes, creeks, and the Mississippi River. Alongside the importance for water quality are the needs for public health and safety and sustainable and affordable systems. This is our stormwater management program that was put together to describe how the city and the park board address the permit requirements. The original program was submitted to the Pollution Control Agency in 2011. We'll be posting the updated 2014 version on the city's website. Once completed, we'll send a communication to each council office. As described in the program, departments across the city and the park board have responsibilities. A lot of the activities are carried out by Public Works. Other city departments with major roles include the Health Department, Regulatory Services, and CPED. What I want to do today is use photos to describe some of the categories as listed on this slide. Last August, we were visited by the United States Environmental Protection Agency for a major inspection or audit of our program. 3 key themes emerged that are helping us modify and improve our program this year. The 3 themes are coordinated and comprehensive training, written procedures and checklists, and availability of staff resources. As in the upper corner photograph, everyone has seen the grates in the street behind the curb in the gutter. These are the inlets to the stormwater pipes. And if pollutants get into our streets, they probably get into our lakes and creeks. Whether it's leaves, grass clippings, cigarette butts, motor oil, pet waste, construction debris, all pollutants are considered to be illicit discharges. Some of the pollutants are spills from vehicles, and the city has a very active spill program to clean these up. With comprehensive training, any staff or official on their daily activities will be able to recognize a problem like this and will know who to contact. Some of the pollutants that get into the stormwater runoff are materials improperly stored. Often these are next to alleys, as in these photos. There are fluorescent bulbs and chemical supplies. When it rains, these pollutants run off into the street system. Another category in the program is requiring development projects to manage stormwater runoff and pollutants on their sites. The photo on the left is an example of a planted swale along the parking lot for the Gopher football stadium. The swale slows down runoff coming off the parking lot and allows it to filter through the plants in the soil, which trap and break down the pollutants. On the right is a parking lot with pervious pavers. That aqua area, that's not part of the pavement design, that's simply drawn on top of the slide to show the extent of the water on the pavers during a rainstorm, a pretty heavy rain. And it demonstrates that the rain doesn't run very far before it soaks in to the pavers, into the rock underlying, and then sometimes into the soil, into the groundwater. Other times, depending on the site conditions, there will be an underdrain that conveys that water into the storm system, but it's after it's been slowed down and after a lot of the pollutants have been removed. Pollutants need to be controlled at construction sites as well. The upper left photo shows a breach of the protection because of a heavy rain. It wasn't installed properly or did not have enough of a redundant system for the kind of rain that came. On the right is spillage from a concrete mixing. This used to be common practice. It's no longer allowed. It's realized what a problem this is. And so this kind of concrete washout is supposed to be collected and disposed of properly. As in the lower photo, the soil at construction sites should not get into the street. So the city has a very active team of inspectors to enforce our ordinances. With the significant amount of construction activity in the city, the workload demand on staff resources for inspection was an important discussion during the EPA audit. Another category of the permit is how the city and the park board manage our day-to-day operations. Here's one example. The upper photo was taken during the EPA visit. An antifreeze spill had been exposed to stormwater running around the corner to a storm drain inlet. Then the photo on the right shows the solution. It's no exposure, meaning a roof was built to cover the drums, and therefore they're not exposed to the rain. Street sweeping operation is a very important part of our program to keep pollutants out of the storm drain system. Another responsibility under the permit is to maintain our stormwater infrastructure. Here are pictures of 2 stormwater ponds that were built 10 years ago. The upper left shows members of the Green Team. This is a youth group of Minneapolis residents that are trained by the Park Board and the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization to help with plantings at stormwater sites. Of course, their work is only a small part of our overall maintenance responsibilities. Another way of removing pollutants is with large underground chambers called grit chambers. They trap materials such as trash, oil, grease, and sediment. The trapped pollutants are then removed by a vacuum truck and disposed of properly. These 2 sites manage stormwater runoff by letting it soak in. On the left, rain runs across the sidewalk into a boulevard swale. On the right, into pervious pavers. This is 2nd Marquette downtown. In both locations, it helps to water the trees and then soaks into the ground instead of running into the street and gutter. Involving residents, property owners, and other members of the public is very important in controlling pollutants. Controlling pollutants at the source is far better than trying to clean up later. 2 examples shown here are the successful ban on phosphorus in fertilizers, and also an example of providing education and materials in ways that are accessible for all members of the community. Reaching out to pick up pet waste is another campaign because pet waste is thought to be a major source of bacteria pollution in the lakes. The Rain Garden Workshop program is very popular, and property owners can reduce their monthly stormwater utility fee when they improve water quality. As shown in the other 3 photos, there are many public events where people can learn. Chemical monitoring of the stormwater and the receiving water bodies is another one of the permit requirements, and the Park Board carries this out even in winter. So in closing, here again are photos of the reminders of the driving force of the permit, where the city of lakes, creeks, and the Mississippi River. We will be submitting our annual report and several proposed changes to the stormwater program to the MPCA on June 30th. In addition to today's public hearing, comments on the stormwater program can be submitted in writing by noon on Wednesday, June 25th. The major proposed changes were sent to a number of interested parties that are shown in the staff report, and the major changes are also included as attachment 1 to the staff report. There'll be some minor housekeeping changes to the program, and this slide provides a link to the existing stormwater management program and information for written comments. The staff recommendation is to adopt the stormwater management program and the annual report by formal resolution.
Thank you. Any questions for this presentation? Seeing none, thank you for that presentation. And I will, this is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to comment from the public? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I will receive the public comments and direct staff to respond to the public input regarding the city's Park and Recreation Board's Stormwater Management Program and National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4, Phase 1 Permit Annual Report for 2013 activities as required by the permit issued by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and approve the resolution adopting the Minneapolis Stormwater Management Program NPDES MS4 Phase 1 Permit and Report for 2013 activities. That's my motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. Thank you. We now go to the end of the agenda, and we have discussion items, and as noted, when we set the agenda, we will go with item 18, the Nicollet Mall redesign reconstruction project, prior to item 19. So, or actually, 19 is first.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, we actually were able to make the revision on the agenda that you see in front of you that we were looking for. So I'll have John Wertjes, our Director of Traffic and Parking Services, do the presentation on the car sharing pilot.
Aha. Oh, I see that 19 is before 18. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. And now that we got the agenda sorted out, today I've got an update for you on the car sharing pilot. We began the pilot back in early 2013. We got 3 vendors on board in the latter half of 2013, and so we're starting to get results. And so today, planning to bring you some of those results, maybe just to take 2 seconds and back up on car sharing for the public. Some of our goals are to expand transportation choices relative to the city, as well as to reduce car ownership, and also to reduce impacts like pollution and energy consumption is part of the rationale for engaging vendors, private vendors, to do car sharing in the pilot, and then do a pilot in the city. I thought what I would do here today is kind of maybe take these in reverse order as to how they came online, and then at the end do a presentation with some information about the Car2Go. Zipcar was our last vendor to get on board right around January of this past year. They've been in operation for 5 months. They have 16 vehicles on the street. They also have, and these are on-street locations, they also have some off-street locations as well. Our car came about a month in advance of that, in December of 2013. They have 6 locations on street in that regards, and they have 25 off-street locations, and our car had been around with their off-street locations for a number of time. Both Zipcar and our car are getting near to their second quarter or 6-month anniversary, and so shortly at the end of June and the end of July we'll be getting their quarterly reports from them, and so we'll be posting those online for the public to see as well. Relative to Car2Go, Car2Go was the first vendor to start. Car2Go, in difference between them and our car and Zipcar versus reserve space versus point-to-point free-floating service. Car2Go started 9 months ago in September. They currently have 350 vehicles that they have doing their car sharing service. They also have ability to increase that, and we're talking with them about that, and I'll speak to that later. I will be presenting their third quarter report, and so with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn to the PowerPoint. This is the recent third quarter report that we just got from car sharing and Car2Go in that regards. They've kind of created their car sharing summary quarterly reports to meet our goals and the information we're looking for, but also to take the opportunity to promote some of the information. And this first page is really just kind of going over some of the successes that they've had and some of the responses that they've gotten from the public. In addition to that, their second page from the quarterly report really gets into some of the comments they were hearing directly through social media regarding their Facebook and Twitter accounts in that regard. So their quarterly reports have been providing those types of kind of updates along the way. In this quarterly report, they've also kind of highlighted the point that not only are they partnering with and providing service within the city of Minneapolis, they've also been partnering with a couple of private entities who have, I'll call it remote campuses. You can see Target up in Brooklyn Park, as well as Wells Fargo, and they're kind of providing service to and from and staging vehicles out in those campuses too, to provide service not only to city of Minneapolis, but also to private entities. This is their overall member growth. As you can see, it's been consistently increasing throughout the quarters. It flattened a little bit, I think, over the winter time there in their growth, but it looks like it's picked up again, and so we'll continue to do that. Well over 8,000 registered members. I can proudly say that I am a registered member, and I have used it several times. So, in addition to that, they're got some average and some data here about their rentals per week. You can see the trend line here of being increasing over their time period. Likewise, their rental use per vehicle. So in this case, each vehicle is being used 1.25 times per day. So that's a good increasing number. And then their minutes and mileage has pretty much gone up and down, but pretty consistent. 5.6 kilometers equals about 3.5 miles, and about 20 minutes worth of rental time. Distribution. They've got member distribution in this regards. I will declare right now, and maybe I'll turn to the projector thing. 55406 you'll see in the next pie charts, which is this area over here in the far east side of the city, is our leading winner, and so I'm sort of creating a competition to the other zip codes in order to kind of get their act together, but consistently 55406 is slightly a percentage point above the rest, but as you can see, there are pretty good membership distribution amongst a number of the zip codes. Likewise, trip starts, we've got that information about where they're starting trips in that regards. Once again, 55406, 08, 07, 14, 03 are kind of leading the pack in that regards. And then same thing with trip ends, pretty consistent in that regards of trip ends. And then lastly, lastly is the mileage component of it. Likewise, not only is 55406 putting in the most usage, but they're also traveling the furthest in that regards. And so then a couple points about moving forward. They're continuing to look about their expansion and how they can engage other parts of the city, specifically North Minneapolis neighborhoods further. And then you may have heard that Car2Go is talking with St. Paul, and we're expecting to hear the news on that fairly shortly from St. Paul. There is an expectation that the St. Paul vehicles will come into Minneapolis, and the Minneapolis vehicles will go into St. Paul, and we're discussing that and working that out. So with that, Mr. Chair and committee members, I don't have any further materials with the update today, so I stand for any questions you may have.
Councilmember Gordon?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this and getting the information. And in general, I think people have been excited about car sharing, and it's been a valuable experiment, and it seems to be paying off. However, I also do get calls and concerns and complaints about Car2Go, and it mostly has to do with where the cars are being left and why they're left there. And some people are even thinking that the company might be identifying some prime spots and are wondering why that spot of having a car happens to be in front of their house, or why there are two cars here. And I field these questions and answer them the best I can. But I'm also wondering, is Car2Go providing some kind of a hotline and assistance? So if we have resident concerns and they want some more information about it, or let's say a resident doesn't want two cars parked in front of their house, can they call a number, and will someone come out and find a better spot for them?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Gordon, yes, we've been getting those similar phone calls about why are the cars in certain locations and not, and we've been referring those calls directly to Car2Go in that regards. As we're going to build our website here and also to include these quarterly reports, we'll be putting the links and the phone numbers online as well for all three vendors. most of the questions that we have and the understanding regarding where the car is being left is really related to usage, and some of the pie charts that you just saw. There's obvious users right around my house, and they keep showing up near my house, and they're probably being delivered there because I've got neighbors who are also engaging in the service. So.
And that makes sense, and that's kind of the answer that I also give. I could also see if there was some neighbor of yours that always liked to walk to work in the morning and always wanted a car to go to come home, and they were just piling up. That would be a problem for car to go too, because they probably want a disbursement of cars and they want them to be in good locations where people want them. So they probably, I'm not sure how organic it is, and if it's just totally customer based, then maybe they need to add some capacity to rearrange the cars. But of course, we know our bike sharing, our ride sharing, there's people out there making sure that they're stocked up in the right places all the time so people can find it where they want to find it. And I'm glad that we're going to put a phone number that people can find and post it online in the website. We don't have is there somebody from Car2Go here today?
No.
Okay. So
That I'm aware of.
we don't have a number now that we could, because I had trouble even finding that, and I thought, well, I'll refer them to the helpline from Car2Go, and it wasn't that easy to find. And then it would be great if we had a number that we knew that the company was answering quickly and responding to and helping solve these issues, so that it wasn't a burden placed on your staff or me and my staff. And I think that should be part of the contract, and it probably is in there to some level, and we should just expect that. So that's my only comment.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Gordon, we'll not only get the information on the web, but we'll send you all a communication link, and 311 will be linked into all of this.
Oh, excellent.
So we'll get the word out as best
All right.
as we can.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions per the presentation? Seeing none, then I will move to receive and file the quarterly update as presented. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. Thank you for that update. And now we have our last item, which is item 18, the Nicollet Mall redesign and reconstruction project.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and committee members, this is actually really a very exciting milestone that we've reached with the Nicollet Mall redesign and reconstruction project. We've completed the concept design, which you're going to see in a few minutes here. We've secured some state bonding for the project. With our project partners, the Downtown Council and the DID, we're working very aggressively on coming up with a special assessment methodology and model. And this allows us at this point, and this is what most of the action items that you see in front of you today is really to start moving forward with the final design of the project. So with that, I have Peter Brown here, who is our project manager for the Nicollet Mall project, that will make the introductions.
Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, Chair Wright, committee members. My name is Peter Brown. I've been working as a consultant to the City of Minneapolis for the last year and a half on the Nicollet Mall redesign and reconstruction project. And like Steve and all the rest of our team, I'm very excited to be able to be here today to give you an update on the project and give you a tour of the project as well. It's a very exciting time for us, having just received $21.5 million from the state legislature last month. And we're here in part to ask you to authorize us to proceed to the next step of detailed design, as Steve said. So, and we do want to, it took a lot of people to get to where we are, but thanks in particular to Councilmember Glidden, who helped us out at the state, and to Melissa Lesh, our excellent IGR person from the staff, who did a great job. I'm going to give you a quick outline background of the project. The last time we were in front of this committee was last year, and then I'm going to introduce you to Lisa Switkin, our terrific landscape architect from James Corner Field Operations in New York, and she's going to present the design to you, and then Jeff Hanlon and Lisa and I can answer questions for you. So the redesign and reconstruction of Nicollet Mall has been a shared public and private priority for the last several years, priority with the Downtown Council and the business community, who included it as one of their top priorities in their 2025 plan. At the same time, the city has been seeking bonding for the project for the past 3 years, so nice to finally get it this year. This project over the last year and a half has been a true public-private partnership. About 2 years ago, a group of elected officials from the city and a group of business folks from the Downtown Council started meeting, and they created an informal Nicollet Mall working group. And about a year and a half ago, that turned into a more formal Nicollet Mall implementation committee. And we've been working closely with them, with the Downtown Council, the DID, BOMA, and all the different members of the business community. And at the same time, with all of our elected officials here at the city and city staff. It's been a genuine, terrific, positive public-private experience. One of the things we're asking you to do is to approve a revised roster of our implementation committee. Council member Lilligren has now come back and joined us as a at-large citizen at-large member and chair of the group, and which is nice. Some continuity. He was involved in a project and interested in it when he was on the implementation committee last year. The mayor's joined us, as well as Councilmember Fry, and we also asked State Representative Ray Dean to join us. He's an architect, so he's been a great voice and supporter at the legislature and with the project. And I'm not going to read all these names to you, but it takes a village to do this sort of thing. It's not a sole vision of one person. We had a long process of putting together an RFQ and RFP design principles involving all these different folks and working together to get to where we are today. So some quick history. Nicollet Mall has been Minneapolis' main shopping street since the late 19th century. But like every place else in the United States, by the 1950s and the 60s, downtowns were losing shopping to suburban strip malls and regional malls. So in the late 50s, the city started studying how they could reposition Nicollet Mall as a transit mall, as a pedestrian mall. And they hired a man named Lawrence Halpern, who ended up, who was at the time a rising star, became a very famous landscape architect to redesign Nicollet Mall. He's the person who put that curving street in the first place, and when it was completed and opened in 1967, it soon became a kind of a national example. Cities around the country were looking at it as an example of a pedestrian and transit mall downtown. Not all of them worked as well as Nicollet Mall really has. But it lasted about 23 years. It turns out our winters eat our malls in 23 years. After that time, the heated sidewalks, the systems had failed under the concrete. Materials become worn and out of date. There's capital, there's the infrastructure side of it, and then there's the style side of it. So when the mall was 23 or 24 years old, the business community and the city got together again and redesigned it. It was completed in 1990. It was extended 4 blocks south to Grant Street, where the hotels are, the Millennium and the Hyatt. The serpentine curve was, as we call it, was kept, although it was made a little flatter and a little more gentle. A new paving system was installed, which is that granite that we all see today, which was a very nice and expensive product, although it's slippery and as it's aged, it's become more increasingly expensive to maintain and repair. And that design included a whole lot of street furniture that ultimately has cluttered the mall. So between the bus stops and the benches and the light bollards and the light post bases, which are so large, something was lost between the first and the second design, which is why sometimes when you're walking on Nicollet Mall, you have to go single file to get past a street pole. So we've reached the point with that Nicollet Mall that it's time to replace it again. And one of the things, in addition to sort of the wear and tear, some big things have changed in the last 50 or 60 years. When the first 2 designs were done, sustainability was not something we worried as much about. Stormwater management, water usage, power, energy didn't matter as much. But also demographic changes have occurred. When the Nicollet Mall was first designed, downtown residents weren't a priority. It was largely a business, 5-day-a-week kind of mall. But as you all know, after 50 or 60 or 70 years of suburbanization, people are moving back into the city. So a new population and a new user group for the mall is downtown residents. Cycling and multimodal transportation has become much more integrated into urban design, and so there are a lot of reasons why we need to look at the mall again today. Nicollet Mall is the state's business center. 140,000 employees a day travel to Nicollet Mall from all over the state. There are 34 million square feet of office space on or near Nicollet Mall. And the business people will tell you, all of them, how important it is as a recruitment tool for business. People fly in, either candidates for jobs or companies that are interested in doing business with companies here in Minnesota, take the train from the airport to Nicollet Mall and get off and walk around, and that's their first idea of what Minnesota and Minneapolis and its region are all about.
And on top of all that, of course, our population is growing. It's also the economic engine for the city and the region and the state. 3 Fortune 500 companies on the mall, many, many other businesses. And you've probably all seen these statistics on the impacts we expect to see from this design and construction project in the next several years. So the whole project, and the whole purpose of this project, when we started meeting a year and a half ago, we created a list of, I think, 20 or so design principles. But really what they were all about was making Nicollet Mall a place for people, a pedestrian place, making it a place that was green and lush and had more trees. Using the design to encourage more active street use and to encourage property owners along Nicollet Mall to invest in their ground floor spaces and open their stores and their space to the street. Integration of transit modes. And then from a capital and operating planning standpoint, a combination of excellent urban design that's climate appropriate, sustainable, and at the same time durable, and something that's going to be cost effective and easy to operate and maintain for the long term. The scope of the project is a complete redesign and reconstruction of the mall from Washington Avenue to Grant Street. It's 12 blocks. Basically from building face to building face within the right-of-way. We're going to be working with some of the neighboring property owners if there are places where it makes sense for us to extend the design onto private property. Relocation of utilities is required by the design, but we are not going down 30 feet and replacing all the utilities for 12 blocks. That's not the purpose of the project. And streetcar-ready design. Project schedule, it's nice to go back and find the slides from the presentation last year, and when you go update these presentations to realize that we're on schedule and things haven't really changed and we're kind of doing what we thought we were going to do. We completed our competition, design competition, and announced the winner, James Corner Field Operations, last September. We contracted with them in December, and they did a 5-month-long concept design phase that included extensive community engagement process and 3 public meetings. We hope to start detailed design in the coming month, and that should take about 12 months, including bidding and award of construction contracts. And then construction should take another 12 to 14 months. We hope to have substantial completion by September 2016, and then total completion, grand opening late fall 2016. And the budget is $21.5 million in state bond proceeds, city match of $3.5 million, and $25 million in assessments from property owners on and near the mall. And uses of funds, $35 million in construction costs and $15 million in fees and soft costs. I'm happy to tell you that a part of James Corner's contract was a cost estimate at the end of the concept design phase, and the project is on and slightly below budget, which is a good place to be at a time like this, because we have a lot of work left to do in the design phase, detailed design. I'm not going to read all these to you, but we've had 40-plus meetings. I think we don't actually know how many we've had at this point with all of the building owners, retailers, restaurants, neighborhood organizations, pedestrian, bicycle, just all the different kind of groups. And we have many more scheduled. We're going to be doing 3 or 4 more meetings today and tomorrow. That's just the beginning, not the end of the community engagement process. As we go forward later in the summer, we plan to meet block by block with all the different property owners with a big site plan and start to get into the detail of how each property is impacted by the concept design and how we can make our design help those property owners and vice versa. And so back to James Corner, we had a 3-stage consultant selection process last year, spring, summer, fall, and included an RFQ for which we received 21 submissions representing 60-plus highly regarded, nationally and internationally known design firms combined into teams. We narrowed that down to 3 teams and asked them to do a concept design, do a design competition for us. We offered them $30,000 stipends in 8 weeks. They had to go figure out all of downtown Minneapolis in 8 weeks and come back and make a presentation to us in the fall at the Guthrie Theater. We selected James Corner Field Operations, hands down. They made a terrific presentation, and I'm very happy to tell you that for the past 6 months we've been working with them. They're an excellent, terrific design team, and they are doing a great job serving the city, looking at everything from 100,000 feet up down to the details and looking at all the corners. A project like this has a lot of areas you have to cover. So they've been great partners. So with that grand introduction, I want to hand it over to Lisa Switkin from James Corner Field Operations. She's the partner in charge at James Corner. This is the firm, of course, that did the High Line in New York City, of which Lisa's been involved for the last 13 or more years. So.
And if I may, just to make a request for an electronic file of the design presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My name is Lisa Switkin. I'm a principal at James Corner Field Operations, and it's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. So I know it's already late in your day, so hopefully this will be a little bit fun for you. I wanted to just quickly walk you through the vision for Nicollet Mall and what we've been working on for the last 6 months. Switch to this one if it's still on. So this project has very much been not only a collaboration with stakeholders, et cetera, but also with the community. And starting in December, one of our first events that we had was actually on the mall in the middle of winter. You guys introduced us to the meaning of a Minneapolis winter quite well in December in a tent. And, the first part of the project was really to glean what types of things people sort of most wanted to see here. We came back in February with a sort of larger framework and vision for the mall, presented that to people, and again had a very large, extensive conversation and dialogue about priorities for this place. And we were back in March 15th to present the final concept design, again in a large format way. In addition to that, as Peter mentioned, we've had numerous stakeholder meetings. I think one of the sort of special and unique things about the mall is how many people it touches, literally. Not only its adjacent sort of property owners, et cetera, but just people who come and visit the mall. And part of the goal for the project is to kind of return to that legacy of the mall when people were really excited and it meant something to sort of come downtown and be at the mall itself. So we started kind of looking way out and sort of beginning to think about Nicollet Mall and its position in the larger area and how it truly is a link that has the capacity to link the two sort of major resources of Minneapolis, the Mississippi River as well as the chain of lakes, and how this right here in the sort of city center has that opportunity to really stitch those two things together. It's 1 mile long. We've sort of coined the term Nicollet Mile as new concepts, that it's no longer a mall, but it turns into a mile, which has a connotation of being a more pedestrian place, being something that has a kind of measure that really resonates with people, that you could actually walk the mile, and that the mile itself actually connects to distinct kind of cultural and natural hubs in the city. In addition, part of the work that we did with the state bonding, et cetera, was helping people understand Nicollet Mall's position in the larger kind of downtown concept and the revitalization, the activity, leveraging it, and kind of working off of all of the good work that's happening there right now. So here you can sort of see in orange all of the different projects that are happening and how Nicollet Mall really does kind of become a link, a spine, and help to continue all of that effort and make it even better. In addition, one of the things that we really found important and exciting about the mall is that it actually did, lots of cities around the world are trying to kind of create environments that work for live, shop, work, play. But Nicollet Mall already sort of has the seeds of all of that there today. It is the downtown. It has the kind of work environment. There is new residential coming in, and the 2020 plan is looking to extend that. There is the kind of dining, entertainment, or the kind of play that we call. And of course, there still is some of the retail that's there now. So you already have the seeds of that, and the idea was how to make that even more dramatic and better. In addition, one of the bigger concepts was also this idea of a shared street and what that means in today's day and age, the idea of pedestrians, bikes, and transit actually being together. and forming a great street. One of the things we learned early on was this idea that when people tried to position Nicollet Mall in the sort of spectrum of streets from, on the one hand, streets that are primarily vehicular to ones that are completely pedestrian, you know, it was important that it still remained a transit corridor for many people. That's the reason why a lot of the companies are based there. It's easy to get to. You can sort of actually have that accessibility. But they wanted us to sort of look at how do we make it lean towards the pedestrian? So how do we increase the sort of pedestrian experience? There's a number of design moves that we're incorporating that helps us to achieve this. One is the idea of a sort of paving from building face to building face, or sort of, you know, allowing that territory of the street to actually be the entire width, so that you don't just have the roadbed demarcated, but it actually goes from edge to edge. That was an example of Exhibition Road in London. The other thing that this does is it sort of creates an awareness of various modes of transportation. So people actually have to have a higher kind of respect for bikers, pedestrians, cars, etc. In this case, transit, not cars. Eliminating barriers and obstacles, so trying to think of ways that we can actually increase pedestrian amenity, but do it in a way that's more flexible and doesn't have sort of large barriers and obstacles on the street. So again, this allows for more increased space for both pedestrian and bike amenities. And in addition, you know, part of our task is to make it streetcar ready. So the idea of the future embedded tracks and having a kind of more seamless transition between the sidewalk and the street. One of the things that we were inspired by also was this image from 1968. The original Halpern design actually had what was called a clear walk-through zone. So an area that was clearly designated for pedestrians, and then all of the kind of amenities happened curbside of that. Right now, there's a lot of conditions on the mall where it's pinched, where you sort of have to maneuver around, you have to switch from going on one side to the other, and we wanted to kind of reinstate this idea of a flexible circulation route. A clear circulation route, and then flexible spaces for amenities, outdoor cafes, etc. In addition, at the intersection designs, we're actually looking to do what's called a raised crossing. This is an example of that raised crossing that we did in Main Street in Santa Monica, quite different climate than here, but we just wanted to show you how this actually allows you to kind of have a seamless connection. This is connecting City Hall in that instance to the park that we designed. And it actually allows that flow to happen. So on Nicollet Mall, if you were on the mall, you could walk along the cross streets and it would be raised at the same level of the sidewalks. In addition, we wanted to try and make this a better environment for bikes. Right now, bikes are allowed on the mall because it's transit only. It actually is a fairly good environment for bikes because they're professional drivers and you don't have cars. At the same time, there are a couple conflicts that happen when buses stop. So what we decided to do, instead of kind of adding a complete bike lane, which would have taken up a significant amount of the sort of pedestrian zone and space, which is already fairly constrained, we added what's called a bike queue and turn box. This is an example of that, I believe, in Portland. And the idea here is that it just widens right in front of the transit stops so that it gives the bikes a place to kind of go in front of the bus and wait. In addition, we've been working with Snow Krylik architects on our team, local architects here, to work on the transit sort of shelters and integrating that with Metro Transit, et cetera. These are just showing some examples of those and how they are more open but yet still provide a series of amenities important in this climate. So I'm going to quickly walk you through the sort of consistent layers of the mall, which include the kind of paving design, which is really primarily a mix of both concrete unit pavers, a kind of edging detail between the roadbed and the upper sidewalk area, as well as a large area, probably 20% of what we're calling resin bond aggregate, which is really a porous surface where we're going to be doing the most of our planting areas, and you'll see that in some of the images later. The planting generally, goals for that is that it is primarily native, that there's year-round interest, that they're hardy, and that they are unique. One of the strategies here is to sort of plant trees in clumps or groves instead of sort of more formal alleys, and we really think that that speaks to the kind of landscape here in Minneapolis. And it also is a flexible area that can work with some of the existing utilities. We're sort of limited in where we can plant and where we have that space for trees. This is just a sampling of different types of species. We've been working with the Parks Board. There's probably 20 sheets of these, so I just wanted to kind of put in one example of the types of things we're looking at and the palette that we're going to be selecting. For the lighting, Peter mentioned that the current, light fixtures have a very sort of large base. The idea is to actually try and consolidate the lighting into a single tall mast. So the idea is that it is elegant, multifunctional, and eventful. The mast itself sort of has 3 different levels, a kind of beacon at the top that can be programmed and provide year-round interest, a light just below that lights the roadbed, and then a light below that lights the pedestrian environment. We're also going to be looking at, specific lighting for some of the project features, and also looking at areas where if we need additional lighting, how we can do that to make sure that there is a consistent light level and throughout the entire mall. This is an overview where you can just start to see that ribbon of light that really helps to accentuate the curve of the mall, give it an identity, and this could also be programmed as, through the winter, etc. Similar to maybe how the weather ball used to work, where a color kind of notated what was happening with the weather. The idea for furnishings is actually quite innovative and simple. The idea is really to have primarily movable chairs. These are grouped within the groves themselves. It allows for a flexibility so that you can actually, it's very sociable, you can move them around, you can sit together, you can sit with groups of people. They come in all sizes, from kids to etc. And it really also allows you to kind of group them, move them off site, and it gives you that kind of more elegant kind of taut surface where you don't have these large obstacles of large pieces of furniture. So just to end, I'm going to quickly just walk you from south to north. The mall itself, as we said, is 1 mile. It varies, but on average it's about 80 feet wide, which was kind of very exciting for us because the High Line, just for reference, is only 30 feet wide. So even with the roadbed, it let us kind of, in our minds, a site that we're familiar with, gave us the kind of excitement that you could do a lot with that space. The framework really has 2 strong main ideas. The ends of the mall is what we're calling the woods, the Loring Woods and the Mississippi Woods. This is really an intensive greening strategy. We heard over and over again that people really wanted to strengthen the connection to both Loring Park and the river, and this kind of design idea not only worked with the existing utilities where they're less constrained and where we have more sunlight, but it allowed us to kind of create a more park-like setting at these ends and a very green threshold to the mall. So when you enter or exit the mall, you're actually feeling like you're moving into the park system. In the center, we also created what we call the island, which is a very urban center and a place for sort of a town center, we call it, for people to come and gather and have events and other types of things that make it a destination on the mall. Within that, there's a couple sort of moments or episodes along the mall that are different. We wanted to kind of allow people to walk the mall from end to end and have a different experience, that it's not just a sort of repetitive journey, but at different places you have pieces of furniture and other types of things that really speak to that particular place. So here we are at Nicollet and Loring Greenway, and this is today. And part of the Loring Woods in the winter, where we have the fire pits and other amenities in a more park-like setting. This was inspired by some of the really beautiful, interesting programming, winter programming that happens in the city, and using that as actually something to be positive about and celebrate instead of always being sad about it. Nicollet between 11th and 12th. This is right across from the YWCA, the idea of a reading room that actually would sort of connect to that institution where they could have outdoor classrooms, etc. Between 11th and 12th Street, you see PV Plaza on the right hand of the screen, a very sort of simple approach, a kind of more typical part of the mall. Between 11th and 12th, this is quite important to sort of keep and maintain the cafes, and it's one of the things that have been very positive on the mall that we want to continue to enhance and encourage. But the idea here is that instead of having a kind of pinch point where people can barely walk, you see the clear walk-through zone and then you see the cafes outboard of that zone. The sort of typical tree grove, this is, again, you can see that taut porous surface. It actually is bound, so it's not loose, but it actually allows, it's completely permeable. So stormwater, soil, and all of the trees are planted within this, and you see the movable chairs. The island itself, between 8th and 6th, this was a very strategic kind of place for us to actually do something really positive on the mall at 7th and Nicollet. With the kind of investment that's happening at City Center, with IDS right there, it's the moment where all the skyways come together, 4 of them, to kind of create a networked area. It's where the skyways started. It's where they have the most energy now. We decided to actually make a physical link to the skyways to really, one of the things we kept hearing was that the skyways are sort of up here, the road's down here, and there is, if you sort of are in the know and you know how to negotiate that, you can, but there really isn't a place where actually from the skyway, it's clear how to get down to the mall, not really vice versa. So this was actually a gesture, and you see a kind of before image and after image where we do a kind of physical link to the skyway, and underneath that, it also has the potential for revenue generating space to have a kind of kiosk, cafe, etc. There's an example of something like this that we did at the High Line. You can see right underneath the stair, there's a pavilion. This was added probably 5 years after the opening. So first it was a stair, and it was a great stair. And then later, as there was sort of restaurateurs and people interested in the space, they sort of fit out the space and came in. So an example similar of what it could be like in a temporary situation where you actually could have program events, outdoor beer gardens, etc. during season, and then where you could actually glaze it and enclose it once you had the sort of tenant interested. And again, a sort of before and after of the backside of that. And finally, towards the island itself, you can sort of see the idea of literally sort of splitting the road to create this central gathering space and how that works both seasonally and with different types of programmed events. At very particular moments, you could actually close off the whole area and do a sort of full concert. And finally, Nicollet between 3rd and 4th. This is the end across from the library where we're looking to reintroduce the curve of Nicollet Mall so that it really registers as the full 12 blocks and the extensive greening happening here, as well as what we call the theater in the round, which again is a kind of program that really relates to the library itself where they can program it and use it. And then I'll just leave you with a kind of overall image of the sort of power of not only the mall being sort of green, inviting, and connected, but really sort of enhancing the economic vitality of the place and revitalizing downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gordon.
And I don't need to interrupt the presentation. If we have somebody else, I can wait.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jeff Handeland. I'm a principal professional engineer in the Transportation Planning and Engineering Division of Public Works. I just want to summarize the actions we're requesting your committee to take today. We're asking you to recommend approval of James Corner Field Operations concept design, accept the $21.5 million state grant, authorize staff to negotiate for easements for the project, authorize proper city officials to enter contracts with James Corner Field Operation and Peter Brown's company Conurbation for consulting services needed through design and construction phases of the project, and approve the updated Nicollet Mall Implementation Committee roster. We anticipate returning to your committee in the future to give you any important updates, to request authorization to contract with a construction manager, and set and hold a public hearing to approve assessments for the project and to award the construction contract. We will stay nearby in case there are any questions.
And just for full disclosure and truth in advertising, booking prints is not part of the base bid?
Mr. Chair, that is a correct statement.
Okay. Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, and I appreciate the presentation and all the information, and I think it might be nice if this is all linked to the agenda also. I think people would be excited to see this and get more access to some of the drawings and the designs. I did notice that you talked a lot about it going all the way to the river and connecting to the river, and then when we looked at the designs in the pictures, you said it ends at the library. So there's no money and there's no plans to do any work between, is it Washington? What's the last street there past the library? And the river, that's just something we just have to hope to come later?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, I think I can answer that. That is correct. This is in this project, the northerly limit is Washington Avenue. However, I think they took further extension of the green, kind of that green corridor to the river into account while they were designing this. So we certainly viewed that as a future expansion, but it is not part of this project.
Okay, just wanted to be clear about that, and I think that would be a great future expansion to look at that. It's hard to believe with all this money we can't put some of it to help with that connection too. So maybe if we have any savings along the way, we can also see how maybe we can stretch things a little bit further and see how that works. I just also wanted to appreciate all the effort, all the people, all the involvement of everybody so far to get us this far. I think it's pretty incredible that we've done so, and it's taken us all seeing where the common ground is and working together for this and realizing this is the time for the Nicollet Mall. I do want to throw one other thing out there. One of the reasons that I think we saw that we had to do this was because of some of the surface treatments weren't products that we could repair and fix and maintain. And I think it's fantastic to think about these innovative resin permeable items and look at all the treatments we might do on the road and everything like that. But I also don't want to set us up for 20 or years from now or 30 years going, oh my goodness, we can't maintain these things. And I suspect today we're not actually approving all of that with this action, but we're taking some big steps. So just make sure we are really aware of that. We want something we can maintain and repair and fix as well as be innovative.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, I appreciate that value, and I would say that approving the concept design you would be approving using enhanced yet durable materials. We share some of your same concerns, and we are actually planning to do a little pilot project, for example, to test the resin bonded aggregate that we plan to install this construction season.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two quick comments and then a question for staff. First, I just wanted to note that this is fantastic, and I'm so excited to see this. I think this is a great first step for revitalizing the public realm downtown, and I'm really excited that we're also doing a public realm plan for downtown. I think this will really lead into that really well. Second, I wanted to note that I love the mini chairs, and I know you have a whole public engagement process, but just to comment that I think one of the most exciting and unique things about Minneapolis is how family friendly we are, and I think we should always put that forward as one of our big strengths. And so I think creating a playful atmosphere that's family friendly and includes children in the design is really valuable for our city, especially downtown where we're really growing our population of families and accommodating them with a new school. I think it's just really in keeping with that whole movement in our city. Third, I just had a question about pedestrian and bicycle movements. One of the challenges about bicycling on Nicollet Mall is the signal timing, because as you're passing and kind of hopscotching with buses and streetcars in the future, the signal timing makes it very slow to transverse the road by bicycle, and you end up stopping at red lights frequently. I've noticed that also with walking. So I wondered I know we just did a big signal retiming project citywide, but I wondered if you're looking at the signal timing as part of this project to make sure the signals also reinforce bicycle and pedestrian access along the mile.
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender, I don't believe we were, but that, and actually I hadn't heard this comment before, so it's something we certainly can look into, and I'll check with Director Wirtjes on it.
I think that would be really helpful. I know we've talked about that a lot at both the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I think the PAC, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, would also note that challenge. And then just finally, I think that we are also looking at alternative bicycle routes that will provide a more kind of quick and fast connection through downtown as part of this project.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Bender, let me maybe speak to that. So this is, ever since we worked on 2nd and Marquette and moved the bicycles back onto Nicollet Mall, it seems to be a very popular route. As a matter of fact, on the north-south, it's probably our most popular bike route. And with the accommodations that we're going to be making in the design, we think it'll actually work even better. It's still a shared facility. With that said, though, this is also the corridor in which we would like to put a streetcar line. And so this is one of the things that we are taking into consideration is that, that compatibility between the streetcars and bicycles. And, I think there's some new technologies out there about filling the gap, but, I don't think we should necessarily rely on that to necessarily be the solution. So with that said, yes, we are looking at other options for a north-south protected bike lane in downtown Minneapolis.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, and I think it's really critical to the downtown network.
Councilmember Glidden?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, one thing I will say is I've already been getting email requests for the presentation materials, so I want to just make sure you get a chance to forward them to the clerk so we can link them to the public agenda. As you might imagine, there's just high interest in all of the work on this project and a lot of excitement. And I guess I'll just express that I'm really so glad that this is moving forward, and it has been a tremendous partnership. Every time I kind of see a presentation or a formulation of the next concept, I get more and more excited about how this work is going to help transform downtown. So just want to say again, I think you have a good process. I think things have been moving along well. I'm glad that we have some of these funding challenges primarily behind us and can really focus now on how do we work towards finalizing the design and the implementation. Maybe this is such like a little comment, but I just would say this whole thing with the materials though and the durability is a big deal. And it's something even that I think of as I go through St. Paul, and they've done a lot of unique crosswalk treatments with the green line, and of course my mind now is thinking, wow, I hope those last a long time, and then I do hope they do. But same thing applies to the Nicollet Mall. I hope that we can have fresh new ideas and some new ways of approach, but really think about how this durability will be emphasized. So I'm glad to hear there's some pilot projects and other tests that are going to happen so that we have a wonderful amenity for years to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the committee? Seeing none, I as well applaud the effort to get to this point. The partnership with the business community is significant, and there's no more significant partnership than a cost participation partner for half the bill, and so that's really appreciated. I know that's we can celebrate it now, but I knew that was a lot of work in the making, and I know Mr. Kramer's here, who represents and has been the spokesperson for the business community that has stepped up and really delivered what has been appropriately called Main Street Minnesota. That's why I think the legislature complied with their part of the deal, because this is a state amenity. And I remember growing up as a kid, going to Nicollet Mall was an event. At least that's what my grandma said. And so I was really, and I think this speaks that initial vision and really brings it home. So incredible work, and I echo the comments that the other committee members have made in appreciation. With that, I will move to receive this update on the project and all the actions and approvals and authorizations that had been stated by staff in this motion. All in approval say aye. Aye. Dissenting nay. That carries. And with that, we have dispensed with the agenda. Thank you. We are adjourned.